whenever I wrote also on Facebook, which I joined very, very late in life, only 2017, a lot of people were inboxing me saying that they enjoy what I wrote. So, and of course, I wanted to get a job as a journalist after many years of being at home as a housewife, and I don't think I was given that opportunity because most people think that as housewives you don't have too much of relevance to say in society, and that really made me think. And of course, the internet is such an amazing space because you don't need to get a job, and you can do what you want to do. You can run a business, you can run your own show, and you don't need to have brick and mortar. And that's how I began. I began writing, and from there, I started with Instagram write-ups and Facebook write-ups, and from there, it happened.
So whether it's that it's a cup of tea that seals the bond between, it's a sort of a sorority around food. So whether it's a cup of tea, the 4 o'clock cup of tea that sort of brings the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law closer, or whether it's the tea that the prospective husband offers by way of proposal. He proposes and forthwith offers her a cup of tea to kind of set her at ease, which I found very, very beautifully touching, particularly in that context of a displaced woman finding a new home. Or whether it is the language of violence, as we find in the story, in Mr. Das's story, which is based in Shillong, the Hills of Hostility, as she puts it, the only place her ever-wandering home, where her heart can rest. It's like when he's hit by, his son's friends who are old enough to be, his son's friends. His bloodied nose and the crumbs of the freshly baked cake. So you have this cake which he wants to get for his family, and then you have these crumbs that are kind of spattered with his blood, and that for me is a very striking image that kind of comes across. That food can take so many different shapes and forms along the narrative trajectory. Also rain. Also, these thematic sort of connectors that I found throughout the story. Rain can be blinding in Shillong. Blinding in Meghalaya. It can be resilient in Shillong, and it can be an omen for Hindus leaving Bangladesh, as in the case of King Chotuchamuch. It seems that rain takes on a shape and form according to people and place. So these are the different things that I found, that you have different stories across generations, across social strata, across different levels of education and professional success or lack thereof. But there are these human themes that kind of bind them all together, string them all together, in a sort of a continuum. And so when you put the book down, you are left with this impression of these little these situations from life that are completely relatable and that you can completely see happening, unfolding around you.
I just want to make one comment on Teen Choto Chamach here. I think I loved it.
Yeah.
But there are two other very important reasons why I loved it. I think as human beings, we need to believe in good. We really need to. And the mother-in-law to me and the husband-to-be who finds her woman out of nowhere and trusts enough to bring her home, they signify what is best in humans. And that is a moment of hope that we all look for.
Yes.
And the fact that he takes that trust to the ultimate and gives it to her. And so does the mother-in-law. She wanted him to marry a neighbor's daughter, but she's very happy with this woman. That is wonderful. And someone, I think Yael or you talked about her life back in Bangladesh and how she was abandoned by her husband. She looks at it at the end, the photograph. She can't even remember his face.
He's a stranger.
Because of the feeling, the warmth,
Yes.
the love, the affection, the acceptance.
And the husband's name is
That to
Kapoor.
me is a huge thing here.
It
That's a
means
wonderful
sun.
story.
It means
Yeah.
the sun. Yeah.
Okay. So, Mohua, I think we're getting on in time, so I'll quickly run through a few more questions. What is your writing process? How do you write? I know you said that you've written this book in the corridor of a hospital, but how do you write? Do you write diligently, with discipline, every day? And also, who do you enjoy reading? And I meant to ask you after Yael, but we skipped over that. Why did you choose this short story format? And who are some of the short story writers that...
Story, which is kind of really magical realism, where I really didn't know. My head was kind of swinging, so I was like, where is this story going? And I had to go and read it twice or thrice. That was a hard story to read, and I had to ask Mohua about it. But I'm going to tell each of you, this book you won't put down. I rarely say that. Her language is simple, pithy. The stories are short. We're not introduced to landscapes, but to landscapes of the mind. We immediately come into an emotional space where you enter. Mohua, you do this so brilliantly, and I've really seen it, into that person's utmost, innermost feelings. And she does it so beautifully. So you're in there with whoever the woman in the story happens to be, and you're going along, and within 4 or 5 pages, the story usually takes an unexpected turn, which I didn't expect at all, except for one of the stories where I sort of knew that this girl who was came to live with a family and with a man, she found that he was ignoring her all the time, and she was wondering if there was something wrong with her, and she was trying to be more attractive for him, and she goes to her own home, and she's pretty much turned away by her parents. And when she comes back, she finds him in bed with another man, with his business partner, and he was coming home late. That's the only one I sort of knew the story of.
You know, to just expand a little on something Yael said, I think what she's talking when she said, it touches you here, it's very easy to write stories with a sympathetic pen. But what Mohua has done is that she's shown complete empathy. She gets into the skin of those characters. She's feeling it. And yet, it's so really underplayed. It's so normal. It's so real. People around us. And that was wonderful. So I think that made the difference.
Yes, I just want to congratulate Mohua again and tell you that, I love the way she's able to feel and touch the soul of that person, whether she's a sex worker, whether she's a gypsy, whether she's a woman in prison who's just committed murder, and yet you feel so sympathetic and understand what made her do what she did. And their stories, not longing, belonging, desire, passion, bereavement, loss, it's all there and beautifully done. So It's only 225 rupees. I think this is the book you would buy many of and gift to your friends, and they'd say thank you.
Thank you so much, Yael. Rupa, I'm going to come to you. She mentioned that story, Jai Mata Di, I think it's called, where this woman is really fighting to make herself attractive, goes home, she's not wanted there, she realizes, comes back, and then finds this man in bed with his male friend. Now, trying to negotiate same-sex relationships, it's really on dangerous ground now. And what is really disturbing is that the fallout can be really deadly because of society's drive to brush this under the carpet. So while this legal battle rages on, what is it you think we can do to change the perspective, to change views on this, attitudes on this?
You know, first and foremost, I completely agree with her when she says that it is an unputdownable book. We all have paucity of time. We lead very rushed lives, so to speak. And yet I read this book at one go, just before bedtime. So it stayed with me. Okay? And what I really liked about it is that at the end of each story is a data that has been taken either from the internet or from newspaper headlines. What was a dry discourse of a data springs to life when she writes a story about it with real people. Her stories are not spectacular, her stories are not scintillating, but her stories are so natural and so real that not for a second do you feel that they are made up.
There are so many book moderations that I've done. This was a real treasure because this was a book that comes straight from the heart. She's not made judgments, she's kept it simple. She feels so much empathy for the characters. Wonderful, no sentimentality. She's given us these slices of life just as it happens. These are all people we know. She's etched them in very fine strokes, and we can all relate to each one of the stories. Hats off to her, she's done a wonderful job. It was such a pleasure.
I think that of the recent books that I have read, this comes as a shocker of a book because not only is it very natural and real, it is also something about a theme that is very close to my heart. It's about feminism, about evolving feminism in today's day. And there is nothing pontificating about the book, there is no judgment here. It is just a very natural recollection of incidents that perhaps the author has experienced herself, and brings it very prettily, very lucidly for the readers. It's a must read. Please do it.
Yes, and that's what made it so special for me, Mohua.
Quickly, because Shush is signaling to me, just before that I want to ask one question. You know what comes out in that story about Baku and that 10-year-old girl and Oti Sundari is the fact that children can be unconsciously cruel, and they may be contrite later, but the damage is done. But how do you deal with this? Do you see this amongst your students?
You know, we get this feeling that children are from heaven, not all that jazz that passes on as wisdom. And the parents, of course, have a very different story to tell, and teachers, of course, have a different story to tell, which they don't tell, because that would lead to the Third World War. Therefore, in all my poker-faced glory, I'd like to say this, that children can be ruthless. They can be vicious. They do not, or maybe they do, at that moment understand what they're doing. They do it consciously. Today, if you really go on the internet, you can actually go and search for something called cancel culture. It's deadly. You just ghost somebody on the internet, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Snapchat, and all those other infernal things that they have. So you just have a child getting other children to join hands and to not acknowledge a compatriot online. That person just disappears. It's called ghosting. Can you understand how cruel that is? That person does not know whether it is out of something that they did, something that is purportedly hurt somebody else, you're at tenterhooks, you're absolutely unsure of where you stand. Children, I repeat again, can be brutal and ruthless. And they are not doing it perhaps because they want to be brutal or ruthless, but because they think it's fun. That's what makes it dangerous. Had it been something that they knew they were doing, they would perhaps tone it down a little bit. However, as adults, we've got to realize that whatever plagues us, plagues them too at their level. You know, to just imagine them to be little darlings is, I think, a huge fallacy.
I don't think I have any other way of expressing, because I think as women, most times we are unheard, even if we want to voice opinions. So the best way is to write, and even if it's 3 readers or 1 reader or 20 readers, my voice has been heard. And you said something very interesting. You said with your father, you had a slightly prickly relationship maybe, and you communicated much better with him when you wrote. I think this goes for my father, because I had a very difficult relationship with him, and yet he was so remarkable in his ways. I think today I am sitting here because of the number of books that he got for me, and of course he was extremely critical that I did not read enough, or much of his dreams that he couldn't fulfill. He wished that I would fulfill that. I did not have a bone for math in me, but he wanted me to go and join IIT. And it became a very, very, it was something that he took it on for long, and I do believe that there is something called the generational wound that Bengalis and Punjabis are, have faced. The Sindhi partition, not too many people have spoken about, or it's not really been articulated very well, in spite of me having a Sindhi filmmaker, so Bengalis and Punjabis, especially our generation of parents, are all, majority of them have gone through this generational wound, and that reflects in their relationships with their wife and their children, because that's that one place where they can completely, take out all those wounds out, and they can't do that with others. What are some of the authors that you did like reading? Well, I've read so many books, but of course Jhumpa Lahiri was, a book that constantly stayed back with me, because I just felt that, living in Rome and being out of India, in spite of that, that book is so universal in its appeal. And I think for me, if God has given me a second chance after being so unwell and I was almost going to become bedridden forever, if not for a great doctor, I cannot not do honesty with my writing, and my honest self is a Bengali girl that lost her home in Shillong, that had to leave Delhi and go to Bangalore, and still not having been, in spite of the 22, 23 years, I still have a longing of which place to call home. So yes, my books are a reflection of that.